543 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting the flare, correct?
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.
It's an exciting time, an historic mission, and we are happy that you're with us for it.
Were tag teaming from I think 15 to 17 for a few months, and then obviously 1058 took over for a while, and then of course now it's not with us anymore. So this is the first time 1060 has flown since I think September of last year, which is a long time.
Yeah, it has been quite a while. Hey, what do you know? There is suddenly a voice from beyond, and hopefully you can hear us all now. We apologize for all of those technical issues. A, it saved you from hearing my terrible puns, and B, it was probably the United States Space Force censoring me for giving away too much info during our last launch stream. So, Yeah, I'll blame the NSA or something on that for NSF here. Thank you again to our team who worked that in the back channel. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I am one of your hosts for this evening. And I'm sure half of you now wish we were muted again. But I am joined by a fantastic team tonight. My co-host tonight in the studio is Alex. How's it going, Alex?
I'm doing great, and definitely cool to be going to the moon today. Feels like the right day, I guess, because it's after Valentine's Day.
Right day for the right stuff to the moon. And then, as you heard a little bit of, we have Mr. Max Evans out in the field for us once again. Max, how's it going?
Well, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where in the world you may be watching from. And hello from a breezy but otherwise gorgeous night here at the John F. Kennedy Space Center.
Beautiful, and that's what we like to hear. The weather is looking pretty good. At last check, the official forecast was 90% go. How's it looking just visually and being out there and feeling it?
As I just said, it's kind of breezy, and all of us here in Florida are getting pretty sick of this El Nino and the nasty weather that it has brought through, and it is kind of chilly, making us all a bit cranky here. But despite the breeze, the skies are crystal clear. A bit of haze on the horizon because it is a bit humid out here tonight, but it is otherwise gloriously clear. So we are expecting nothing less than spectacular views tonight for launch.
Love hearing that. Beautiful views indeed. We've already had some beautiful views so far this evening, actually, of venting. Not from the usual RP1 and liquid oxygen for the first and second stages, but they have been loading the fuel, which is liquid oxygen and methane, into the lander, which will be going to the moon. So, Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of give a rundown of the mission, which is quite unique as we finally launch back to the moon from 39A for the first time since 1972.
Yeah, so it is. I would like to stay here for a second because you can actually see some of the ground systems venting for that. There you can see like a little bit of smoke. That's part of the venting on one of the little vertical tanks that are located there near the tower. And that is part of the new system that SpaceX has introduced for this mission. This mission is unique in the sense that they have a lunar lander. This is the first time a lunar lander uses cryogenic propellant. So this is the first time they use a fuel and oxidizer that can boil off. So in order to be able to use it to the maximum potential, they load it as late as possible. Normally, when you use hypergolics, they are loaded like weeks ahead of the launch on some kind of hangar or processing facility, right? And so you load those well ahead of time. They are storable. They do not boil off, so you can safely do that well ahead of time. For cryogenic propellants, though, that is not the case. They boil off, they go away, and you don't get them back, right? So you need them on the lander to be able to have the maximum efficiency to be able to go and land on the moon. And for that matter, SpaceX installed a new, basically a whole new tank farm with new tanks, and so the one that you're seeing right there, it is the liquid oxygen tank for this system. And then on the other side of the ramp, there's also the methane side of this lander system. So it is actually an independent system. It is not the same commodities that they use for Falcon 9. And they actually load at a different time the lander than the rocket. So the lander is already fully loaded at this point. It starts the propellant load at T-3 hours, and then it basically takes about 2 hours to wrap up that liquid oxygen and liquid methane load. Around T-1 hour, that wraps up, and I'm guessing that is why we're seeing the ground systems venting, because that is usually when they try to keep it off, to top it off, to try to drain back some of the lines and everything, and try to save everything. So that's probably what we are seeing right now. And another thing that they had to obviously introduce for this is not just the ground systems, but also the stromback on the transporter rector is also modified to be able to have lines that go. They actually go into the second stage, to the top of the second stage, and there's like a little QD there that has all of the connections, and they are routed through the payload adapter onto the lander, which is somewhere there encapsulated inside of that fairing. So that is more or less how it works.
Yeah, so the stage 2 has the modification to it. So we take a good close-up look there at the fairing itself with the lunar lander packed neatly inside. But one thing that is not new, that's for sure, is the booster, which is the oldest booster in the fleet. You heard Max hinting at it a little bit at the beginning of the stream. So Max, do you mind telling us a little bit about our booster tonight?
Absolutely. So back on the docket for the first time since September of last year is our beloved booster B1060. For a while, B1060 and rest in peace 1058 were tag teaming from flight 15 to flight 17. And then after 1060 completed its 17th flight, it went on sort of a hiatus. I mean, the last time it flew was about 145 days ago, so it's been quite a while. All of us here were wondering if something happened to it, either in refurb or if it was just waiting for a special mission assignment. And lo and behold, here it is about ready to support a lunar mission for its 18th flight from LC-39A. As I said before, this will be its 18th flight, and which is currently in the lead for active Falcon 9 first stage boosters. That was, of course, B1058, but we, of course, all know what happened, and we are all still in somewhat disbelief that that happened in the first place. But assuming it is able to complete its 18th flight tonight successfully, we are hoping to see it back out within 2 or 3 months to support a future mission and knock out its 19th. Also unique that I think this is the oldest booster to complete a return to launch site landing. Alex, you feel free to correct me if that's not correct. But seeing an 18 flight booster perform a return to launch site landing is pretty unique.
Yeah, it'll be sort of neck to neck with 2 other boosters, which are B1061 and B1062. B1061 actually the 17th flight of that one did a return to launch site. That was the one that held the record, so to speak, of like highest number of flights without a return to launch site, and now it's going to be B1060 on its 18th flight. So that is interesting.
By the way, in case you're wondering just how old this booster really is, we are talking about this has launched Starlinks that didn't have a group number in front of them at the time. So its flight history includes GPS 3 SV03. You have the Starlink version 1.0s, we'll call all of these 1.0. You've got 11, 14, 18, 22, and 24. You have Turksat 5A, Transporter 2, Starlink 4-3, 4-6, 4-9, 4-14, 4-19, Galaxy 33/34, one mission, Transporter 6, 5-15, and 6-18.
Yeah, its first flight was all the way back on June 2020. It was a long time ago.
Oh, it was a different world back then. Thank goodness. So, in the meantime, I do want to take a second here, as we should be getting the go for fueling, hopefully, very shortly. At least fueling of the first and second stage boosters, I should clarify. Normally, it's just the whole rocket, but as mentioned, we've got the lander that is fueled up. We had a lot of support before the stream, a lot of members. Ed Hilton, thank you for becoming a red team. James, that armchair rocket guy, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Reminder, Capcom and above gets access to Discord, along with Tau Antoneutrino, Wonko Sane, and Emeron Yagshioglu. I really hope I pronounced that right. Apologies if I didn't. Randall becoming a red team member. Todd becoming a Padrat member. Adam becoming a red team member. Peter becoming a Padrat member, Lady Rocket becoming a Padrat member, Purple Sector Red Team member, TNHRC Vids Red Team membership, Suzanne DeLong Padrat membership, Paul Moore Launch Director, one of our highest levels of support there. We appreciate that. And then Rebecca becoming a Padrat member, KJ becoming a Padrat member, Tracy becoming a Padrat member, goodness gracious, and Brandon K, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Holy smokes! Wow, Wow, that's a lot of support, everyone. Even when we weren't on the air and while we were dealing with our technical issues, thank you. We really, genuinely, truly appreciate it. That's how we're able to do what we do. That's also why we encourage you to tag us at NASA Spaceflight if you have any questions about this mission too. We also had David Coley that gifted 10 Red Team memberships. Brandon, I believe we mentioned. David Coley gifted 5. Sheriff Tracy gifted 5. And an important question from Alex. I'll put this to Alex. Full nozzle or stubby nozzle?
Well, I'm mostly sure this is going to be full nozzle, but there's a possibility it may not. So on the description, you may see something like maybe not or something like that. I believe that's what I wrote.
So
yeah,
you're
most
telling
likely
me
not.
there's a chance.
Oh no. Well, Max, while we have you, Airbatak asking any chance to see a jellyfish with this launch?
LD briefing.
Unfortunately, not tonight. Definitely for sure, what we call the nebula with when Falcon 9, the first stage, performs its Boostback burn. We call it the nebula because of the exhaust interaction with the atmosphere and the momentum that the booster is carrying through the upper atmosphere at that point. You will see a whole bunch of mixtures of bright light and extremely vibrant colors, from yellow to blue to orange, a bunch of colors. Yes, sir.
Do you hear the net? Are you able to listen to the nets there?
I cannot, no, unfortunately.
Oh boy. Well, I was just gonna say they have given the go for propellant load. Sorry.
No, you're all good. No worries. That is my fault.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I cannot hear the net. My apologies, everybody. But good news is that they have given a go for prop load, so that's always a sign that we are trending in the right direction. But to finish off the question, no jellyfish, but a very strong possibility, almost certainty, of a very vibrant and colorful nebula tonight.
Oh, the Falcon Nebula, it puts on quite a show, especially with that Boostback burn. We saw a pretty good one earlier in the day, but at night, oh, it puts on a show. Let's see here. Randor has a really good question, and Alex, I'll put this one to you. They're asking, why land on the south pole of the moon?
Why are they landing on the South Pole? Well, for this mission in particular, they actually changed the location. They were going to a more equatorial landing site, but they are sort of going for close to the South Pole. I do not remember fully the reason why, but I believe it is because of the payloads that they want to fly on this mission in particular, that they wanted to try and go ahead and land closer to the South Pole. There are certain payloads that are going on this mission that are related, for example, with future lander navigation on the moon. Also, for example, for future missions where you have sort of like relays that can act as sort of navigation beacons, right? Where you can have like signals being sent from an asset on the ground that can give more precise location data to something that is going to land on the moon. So basically just like ground stations on Earth or things like that can go talk back and forth. You can use something like that to be able to enhance the navigation of something that is going to land but on the moon instead of on Earth. And so that is a very interesting thing that they are introducing here for this lander. I'm guessing that it's probably somewhere along those lines.
There you go. Now we have a question here from Brian V. Saying, are there any pictures of the lander? I'd like to see how big it is. Can you show us? We absolutely can. Jay is running the stream tonight, dealing with all of our technical issues, and yet bringing us amazing views. There is a look at the lander just before it was encapsulated inside the fairings. According to Intuitive Machines, the company that built it, it is approximately the size of a TARDIS from Doctor Who, or for those who aren't sci-fi fans, an old blue British police box.
Yeah.
I like. We need to make that the official measurement. Forget bananas. Forget giraffes. How many TARDIS is tall?
Yeah, that should be. I believe it's on like normal units. I think it's about 3.5 meters tall, about 3.5 to 4 meters tall. It is not that wide though. It fits very well and nicely on the Falcon 9 fairing, as you can see there. It has ample room to grow. The mass
Yeah.
is actually also small. It's like less than 2 tons. At least prior to the launch, they were saying that it was somewhere around 1,900 kilograms. So yeah, it kind of depends also on the propellant load, how it goes, and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, the height is 4.3 meters. The diameter is 1.6 meters for those who like action members, but that's with the legs retracted. With the legs extended, it's 4.6 meters around. So this is a 6-legged vehicle, by the way. Good question. Another question that we've seen it so far asking, what is the trajectory for tonight, Max? What way should people be looking if they want to see it?
So tonight's launch will be heading directly east towards its Trans-Lunar Injection flight path, of course, towards the moon. So if you were on the east coast of Florida, north or south, look out directly toward the ocean, and you should have absolutely zero problem seeing Falcon 9 soar out into the cosmos tonight. Especially if I think the weather is cooperating with a majority of the state tonight, especially on this side of the state. So clear skies and crisp atmospheric conditions. You should have nothing but a great seat for viewing tonight's trajectory.
That's what we love to hear, and that means good views for our cameras too. Here's a question from Cliff Maloney. We talked earlier about how they were doing the special fueling procedures for this unique mission, the first mission that will be landing on the moon with cryogenic, super cool, basically your cooled propellants like this. One thing we didn't necessarily talk about was the mission itself. So Cliff is asking, what is the actual mission once it gets to the moon?
Yeah, so again, as I was mentioning, there's a bunch of payloads. In this case, they carry 6 payloads for NASA and 6 payloads for commercial customers. Most of these commercial customers, though, they are like usually fancy things are going on the lander, such as they have like little sculptures going on. They have hang on, what's this called? Yeah, it's called the Galactic Lunar Legacy Labs. It's like some kind of a repository. They usually have commercial customers usually have more fancy stuff rather than sciencey stuff. But there's an interesting one. I found it right now. That is the one that I think it's very interesting. If you remember recently from the Slim lander from JAXA from Japan, we saw this sort of view from the ground of the lander upside down. That is because it deployed as it was coming back to, basically as it was coming down to the lunar surface, it deployed 2 little rovers, and one of them captured that shot of the lander upside down after the landing. And so what this lander is going to do, it has a similar system where it has like a little sub-satellite or something that it deploys around 300 meters above the ground, and as it lands, the other thing, this sub-satellite or whatever you want to call it, it has cameras that are able to track and be able to see the landing as it happens, and capture those pictures and send them back to the lander, and then the lander sends them back to Earth. So that is something interesting that we may see. It's gonna be different than Slim because that experiment in particular is gonna be taking pictures as the landing happens. That is the Eagle Cam sort of spacecraft or project that is from the Embry-Riddle University. And so the interesting thing is that this is something that they have actually been working for like 5 years, and so it is something that hopefully it works and we get super cool shots of that landing as it happens. So cross your fingers that this goes all the way out to the moon and we get to see it, because I'm really excited about that. But yeah, those are some of the examples for the commercial side of things. For the NASA side of things, again, there's a sort of a few a few of the payloads, for example, include LiDAR systems for navigation on the moon. This lander in particular doesn't use those per se for its decision to land on the moon. Like its navigation is relative navigation, similar to how it happens, for example, for Perseverance, where you see rocks here and there, and you try to compare where is the safe location to be able to land. And so that is what it's going to be using. Near the end of its landing, though, it is going to turn off that navigation. It'll rely on its inertial systems, because that's when the dust starts kicking off, and all of the camera systems and everything will be just completely overwhelmed, and so you're not going to see anything. So it's just going to turn off all of those systems, and it's going to land basically blindly, but with the previous information that it had of where it was. So yeah, there's also a laser retroreflector array on the lander. There's a lot of cool stuff as well for charged particles being detected from the moon, because it's important to remind that the moon doesn't have an atmosphere. So whenever there's like a solar storm or something with charged particles coming through, it just goes through. It doesn't stop. There's nothing that stops it, unless the moon is a bit shielded from the Earth, but it doesn't really shield that much because it's very far away. But so it gets the blunt of all of these charged particles from the sun. So there's also another payload to see that as well, to measure all of that environment. There's multiple payloads, I guess. I'm talking here all of the stuff that I sort of remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to name a few of them in just a second. I also want to address an amazing amount of support that's just come in. We have David Coley gifting 10 Red Team memberships, who then also, with a generous super chat, saying, hit the like button and I'll give more memberships. Well, we appreciate that. Airbertac coming in with 20 gifted Red Team memberships. If you get one of these gifted memberships, please give them a thank you. John Depker, a name we see here quite often, gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Another name we see, RC Horseman, gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Cliff Maloney, by the way, thanking you for your answer there. We have Coco gifting a Red Team membership as well. We had VZ Ideas becoming a Red Team member. And then Dennis Vaughn becoming a Launch Director member. Again, one of our highest levels of support, which we really, really appreciate. And I think we just answered the question that Brandel had of, will we see any result or feed from the lunar surface? And that hopefully we'll maybe see some of that video from the Eagle Cam from Embry-Riddle, which will be deployed. And also that will supposedly continue to operate and has its own experiment, basically the paint on it tested to see how it withstands the radiation. While we have a moment here, I do want to talk about some fun facts according to the company. And none of these are sponsored, so all the company names we mentioned, unless you want to sponsor us, contact our team. Columbia Sportswear is providing the lining that will help protect the lander from the crazy temperatures in space. Supposedly the same one that's actually used in their jackets. Here we go. The lunar lander's main engine is offset. We do know that. The inertial measurement unit that we were kind of just talking about on Nova C was partially tested attached to a Toyota Tundra.
Oh, I read that. I was like, that is a bit interesting.
And the lander battery pack store enough energy to fully charge approximately 130 iPhones from dead. Well, priorities.
That's probably not a lot of energy.
Yeah, and also worth mentioning that the employees' names are actually etched into the footer on Nova C, so it will be permanently stamped on the moon there. Now, in terms of the lander there itself, again, we did actually have someone questioning about that, saying that basically, will this stay in one place once it makes contact with the moon, or will it move to certain areas, according to D.A. Swanson here, asking?
No, it'll just be landing on one single location, and it'll not hop around. At least not for now. That is not the plan. in the future, maybe some future lunar landers might do that, but for now, it is not the plan to do that. Now, it is also not supposed to go back into orbit or anything like it. It doesn't even have the capability to do that, so it's okay. The other thing that I will mention though, maybe if we can bring up the graphic of where it is actually landing, because we've talked about it's landing on the moon, it's landing on the moon, but we haven't said where, right? So there's this basin, this impact crater basin that is called the Malapert basin, and it has like little sub craters, because the moon it's like a fractal of craters where you have a big crater and then there's like a bunch of smaller craters, and then inside of the smaller craters there's even smaller craters. So this is the Malapert basin, and you can see there the layers that they have for the sub craters, for the main sub craters that they have for this mission. And it is going to be landing on A, where it says A. That is the Malapert A sub crater. That is where this lander is going to go to. You can see there towards the bottom of that screen where it says Malapert, towards the bottom there's like a mountain ridge. It's like a massif, it's the word, or something like that. It's like a mountain range that is created from the impact of this original Malapert asteroid or whatever impacted here that created this big crater, this big basin. And that location is part of the proposed Artemis 3 landing sites that are going to be sort of down selected eventually, I guess, for Artemis 3. So here you can see a view of the lunar South Pole, and those it's very small, the letters, but they are there, and those are the squares. Those squares are the locations that are being proposed for Artemis 3, which is going to be the first lunar landing on the moon since 1972. That is going to be with SpaceX's Starship, by the way. So it's very neat that this lander is launched on a SpaceX rocket, and that'll be on that red circle that is circle there. That is sort of the location where this lander is going to go to. You can also see it's very close to the lunar South Pole. It is going to be the closest lunar landing. If it actually goes to that point and lands, it'll be the closest to the lunar South Pole ever. Any other lander has landed farther north than this location, so that's going to be a first as well.
It's also worth noting, just to add on to the previous question and this, it is expected to, it's powered by solar panels, and it's expected once it goes into lunar night, most of the instruments on board will start working even when the sun comes back out. But one thing that we know is working is the countdown clock, as we can see the T-minus 20-minute vent right there on the screen. Max, what's happening during the vent?
So essentially, SpaceX right now is purging the liquid oxygen lines inside the Strongback in preparation to load the second stage with liquid oxygen, and of course, super chilled RP1 as well.
Stage 2 RP1
And of
load
course,
is
right now,
complete.
as you can see from our view up here, it is. I mean, the amount of vapor coming out of the TE right now and off the tank structure of Falcon 9 is remarkable, and it is often a teller of what the atmospheric conditions are doing right now in Florida. And as you can see, there is a ton of vapor coming off of it, which is indicative of super moist and super humid air around the launch site right now. So you just even over here at the press site, it is very moist, it is very sticky. Very unlike this time of year, but you know, it is what it is. But it is wearing quite the impressive cape right now, I guess you could say.
Yeah, there's a rocket under there somewhere, we promise, based on that view.
Yes.
It's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Super Falcon. I should probably shush. Although, people are allowing, apparently, for me to pun, Videford with a very generous $30 super chat saying, "Great to hear you all again tonight. Been a long day for NSF and a long one again tomorrow. Tell us about it. Pun away, Sawyer." It's very much appreciated. And then Mark Land also said, "I'm in for 20 memberships if we get the likes to 600 before launch, and Sawyer will get 10 more pun tokens to boot." And then shortly after, gifting those 20 more Red Team memberships. Goodness gracious. Falcon 9 is not on fire, thankfully. And then the support tonight is unbelievable. Look at this. Anubis Khan upgrading to Flight Engineer, the top of the top here. Thank you so much. John Depker also with more support saying, how awesome is this? A moon mission from 39A. Thanks for covering, NSF. It's our pleasure. We also have Jeremy getting...
For the first time in years and years and decades.
1972. This will also be the first ever commercial lander to hopefully successfully land and land upright on the surface of the moon. Jeremy getting a bunch of items from the store with a pun included, saying, why is the moon so hungry? Because it's only full once a month. Getting the Starship patch there. I appreciate that, Jeremy. I'm willing to give some of my pun tokens for that as you get the patch collection there. Thank you very much. And then Lewis Rogers saying, please give a shout out to the Rogers kids. You guys are awesome. Hello, Rogers kids. And then YU saying, any update on Starship's launch date? Short answer, no.
There's no updates other than the things that we have already talked about, that it's probably going to be, it's currently around early March. But yeah.
While this is venting here on Earth, the other question we talked about, it getting to the moon, but how long is it going to take to get to the moon? Take Watcher Vince and Matrix both asking that question.
Yeah, so unlike some of the recent lander missions that they have taken the long route, because this lander is using cryogenic propellants, it is taking a faster route to the moon. So it's going straight out to Trans-Lunar Injection. The second stage on the Falcon 9 will inject it. It's going to take 2 burns to get to that point, but once it separates, it's going to be separated and into a Trans-Lunar Injection trajectory. So it's not going to do a lot of the low energy trajectory paths that are going to the moon or anything like it. It's going to land there around 7 days from now. It is currently expected to land around February 22nd. We don't know when on 22nd, but it is currently set up for a February 22nd landing on the moon, so about a week from now.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth mentioning a little bit just the flight profile for this. The plan for it is a much shorter than usual second stage burn for SES-1. It's going to coast for quite a bit, and then it will have SES-2, which will put it on its way into the Trans-Lunar Injection, basically launching it on its way to the moon, at which point IM-1 will then make sure everything is power positive, that it has all the battery and that the batteries are charging. They'll test out the thruster systems. They will do small course corrections with both the engine as well as the cold gas jet thrusters. Send it out to the moon where it will enter orbit on the far side, and then it will also do its deorbit burn automatically on the far side too, some point, as you mentioned, on the 22nd there. For those that are joining, I've seen a bunch of people asking once again, saying, SpaceX said they're using methane on the Falcon. Max, do you mind just kind of explaining for those who missed the fact that there's actually methane on a Falcon 9 rocket, I guess, technically?
Yeah, who would have thought that one day SpaceX would actually be incorporating methane prop loading into Falcon 9? That's fascinating. But essentially the payload, the IM-1 lander, is using a combination of liquid methane and liquid oxygen as its propellants, which is also unique is in that this is also the first time. So this is the first time that SpaceX has supported any sort of methane loading on its structure. But it's also the first time that SpaceX has been able to support any cryogenic fluids or propellant inside of its fairings for any payload. And I also just had to say real quick how fitting it is for LC-39A to be supporting a lunar mission with a proper trans-lunar injection and not another high energy orbit, say what happened with iSpace or Japan's iSpace lander back in, I think that was, what was that, July or August last year, I think it was. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was back in December of 2022.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
Month and a half
December
ago.
2022.
Yes, but but just like Apollo 17, 52 years ago now, crikey. That just seems so fitting for this pad and for this rocket, of course, especially for the future with Artemis 3.
And also Apollo 17 was the final, not only the final launch, but also the first night launch of the Apollo lunar program, and I guess appropriate that we are launching at night once again tonight.
The first and only, yes.
Yep, as we are now about 13 minutes away or so from the scheduled liftoff time here. Now, talking about those other landers, James has a really good question. I'll put it to you, Alex. Does this mission's trajectory differ from the Peregrine mission, or is it basically the same?
Yeah, so it's actually different a bit in the sense that the Peregrine lander was inserted into a high orbit around the Earth, and then basically the apogee was pretty much at a lunar orbit. The only difference is that the moon was not there. The plan was to have a one orbit check out around the Earth and then come back, and at perigee it will sort of adjust its orbit so that it could go into orbit around the moon. And so the problem with Peregrine is that it eventually was not able to do any of those corrections. It had that leak on its propulsion system, and so it wasn't able to complete the mission. But it took longer, but it was sort of kinda maybe in a Trans-Lunar Injection. It's just that the moon was not there. It was set up in such a way that the moon will go there 2 weeks after the launch. But by then, the lander will have done a full orbit around the Earth, and then another half orbit out to the moon. So that was sort of the trajectory plan for Peregrine. In this case, it's straight up. Whenever they go out to the moon will be there, and that is the nominal plan. I believe it'll take about 3 or 4 days to get there. It'll take 1 day and a half around the moon. It'll have different trajectory orbit, lowering burns and things like that. And then once it's closer to the landing burn, it basically lowers the orbit to a sort of egg-shaped orbit with the Apollyon, as it's called, the sort of highest point in its orbit around the moon. It'll be around 100 kilometers, and then the lowest point it'll be about 10 kilometers, and that's where it's going to be executing the landing burn around 10 kilometers from the lunar surface.
And no, Apollyon is not the next product coming out from Apple. It's crazy because you have Apohelion, which is orbit around the highest point in the orbit around the sun, and you've got Apolluna here, which is for the moon.
And Apogee for the Earth, and then Apoapsis, which is the general term. So yeah. One thing that is, I don't know, Sawyer, you have obviously the panel in front of you. I'm not sure. We haven't gotten yet the question of why is it that this lander in particular is using methane? Why use cryogenics in the first place rather than storable propellants like the other ones?
That is true. I mean, Astro 3DI did have a similar question asking if the use of high-energy metalox allows for a direct TLI with a higher required delta V for lunar insertion. So in simpler terms, to answer that question, why methane?
Yeah, so it really doesn't have to do with the higher delta V required for lunar insertion, because in general, a hypergolic lander could also do the work as well. But if you think about it, in the future, we're going to need higher efficiency cryogenic engines, because you have higher efficiency from your engine. You can then produce that cryogenic on the moon. You can basically take water, for example, and create oxygen for not just breathing, but also for oxidizer, for liquid oxygen for your engine. Methane, it's a little bit trickier. There are some hydrocarbons, especially on the south pole of the moon, that is interesting, that we have found some evidence of hydrocarbons on the lunar south pole of the moon. So maybe in the future, by doing a lot of trickery and magic with the regolith, we could probably maybe do methane, but there's also hydrogen as well. And so all of these future landers can make use of the things that are already on the moon. So if you think longer term, it is very important for all of these landers to start getting that training, that experience of using cryogenic propellants. So that is part of the reason, but it is also part that there's already prior work being done on this. So in the early 2010s, NASA worked on the Morpheus lander. Basically, it was NASA with Armadillo Aerospace, which provided the engine, and this actually has heritage on that project as well. And that lander used basically liquid methane and liquid oxygen, just like this lander as well. And that lander was like a prototype that they were setting up for the future of lunar exploration and things like that. And so what Intuitive Machines did is they took that previous experience and tried to make their own lander based on that heritage. And I think it's cool because, you know, you take lessons learned, right? And you try to actually put them to work, to actually put something on the pad and try to land on the moon, which is really exciting because, again, that Morpheus lander eventually crashed and the project was just shut down. And so they were able to advance on those on all of that data and all of that testing. And I think it's cool because, again, we're going to have Blue Origin, they're going to use liquid hydrogen. Starship, we're going to use liquid methane. And I believe Intuitive Machines actually talked on the press conference before the launch that they may probably share some of the data on how those things work to land on the moon with both Artemis lunar landers, because it's important for that kind of data to be shared and you know to take use of all of that knowledge that we can gather. So it's really cool in my opinion.
And we are hearing so far, go for launch on the countdown net, everything continuing. So we hit T-minus 7 minutes. Max, can you just give us a quick rundown of what we can expect, and then we'll let you go get your cameras ready.
Well, at this point, they still have to chill down the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage because, of course, the last thing you want to do is shock all of your plumbing in the engine section and causing all sorts of gaseous appearances inside the plumbing, and that would just cause all kinds of bad news, and it would make for a very, very bad morning for everyone on the launch team. And that they will wrap up stage 2 liquid oxygen loading here in a few minutes, and then of course Falcon 9 will go into startup at T-minus 1 minute. And from there, the team is mostly hands off unless they see something worth sticking in manually. At which point they will call out hold. Hopefully not.
Stage 1, RP1 load is
but lots coming up here in the next, I guess now 6 minutes and 15 seconds. But unfortunately, gentlemen, I do have to leave you now and get ready to work some cameras. So I will see you boys on the other side.
Sounds good. And get that camera under control. It wanted to fly off on its own there. Thank you, Max. Good luck.
And Max was talking about that propellant load going on. They have already wrapped up all of the RP1 load, both on the second stage that happened around T-minus 20 minutes. Now the first stage is also fully loaded with propellants as well. Not with all of the propellants, with the RP1 load. It's still loading liquid oxygen. It will do so for another 2 minutes or so, and that'll be the wrap up of liquid oxygen load. In the meantime, while it happens, in about a minute or so, we're going to see that strom bag starting to retract as well. And then about a minute after the liquid oxygen load wraps up on the first stage, that'll be the same for the second stage, and the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with propellants ahead of liftoff. So we're getting really, really close here to the liftoff, just a bit over 5 minutes from now.
And hopefully once we see that retract, maybe we'll get a close enough view to kind of get a look at the plumbing that fueled up the lander too. That would be cool.
Falcon 9 tanks.
I do want to hit some support. Angry American saying 4,500 watching at the time, only 1.2k likes. Show love, smash like. Thank you for doing my job for me. We've got John, item from the store, saying, oh, there's flames, smoke, and thunder, and a water deluge under. When the night of the Raptors, fire fills the sky. I'm sure that's a song reference that's going right over my head at this late hour. But thank you for getting the IFT3 patch. And goodness gracious, look at all these gifted memberships. David Colley, once again, gifting 10 Red Team memberships. More. Brandon Meyer, 10 gifting Red Team memberships. Boy, I've lost my words at that more. And Bideford, 10 Red Team memberships as well. Wow. Your generosity tonight, everyone, has been unbelievable. Thank you. So let's hoping that SpaceX is just as generous and gives us a launch as tanks are pressurized for the strong back retract here. So how far back does this retract actually go, and why retract it?
Yeah, so it is about 1.8 degrees. It is not really that much. The reason for that is to leave way for the rocket to be able to get pressurized and everything. And the part of the reason is also because you have those claw clamps at the top, and so you kind of need to retract those, open them, and pull a little bit away. In this situation, this retraction sort of sets up the stromback for at T0 at liftoff. It just pulls away. It sort of gets it in that sort of configuration to be able to pull away and not get blasted by the rocket's exhaust. That is important, I guess.
Yeah, I believe the term used for that is the strongback throwback as opposed to the retract, because it throws back quite quickly, and in doing so also retracts
Stage
all of
one
the connections that
Stage
were
one
attached
launch
to
notice
Falcon 9, basically to protect them so that they can be used again and also don't get tugged along by accident and stay attached to the rocket. Obviously, we don't want that.
And now the stage 1 LOX load is complete, so the booster is now completely loaded with propellants. Now the second stage should do the same in about a minute or so.
And once the second stage does, we should see another vent similar to the T-minus 20-minute vent. It's doing the same thing of purging that line for the second stage fueling, just instead of getting ready for more fuel, it's clearing out the line so that there's no residuals ahead of liftoff inside of them. You can see there on the countdown, we should be about 10 seconds away from that. Or 5 seconds, excuse me. My math is off. There we go.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, it kind of depends mission to mission, especially on the Starlink missions, they try to squeeze a little bit more of propellant. So it's a bit later into the count when they load this liquid oxygen, or they stop the load of liquid oxygen. So yeah. So far everything is looking great for a liftoff in less than 2 minutes.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
About 2 minutes and counting at this point, as you just mentioned there. You can see some of that vent to the frostiness coming from the second stage there. And again, a reminder that the payload is also fueled.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete, so now we should see that venting from the TE as they basically clear out the lines that you were mentioning before. So
there we go. We're just getting one step closer at that point, about 90 seconds or so until launch with that call out. I believe they're closing out some of the gaseous vents as well.
Yeah, you can see that venting. It is amazing seeing that venting. We were talking about that as well during the Starship stream, and it is always cool when these rockets are this active.
Absolutely love it. And a reminder, again, the third stage, so to speak, the payload is fully fueled as well with liquid oxygen and liquid methane. The first Falcon 9 to fly with methane on it. Falcon 9 is in startup, so the onboard computers have control of the countdown at this point. The tanks are also pressurized to flight pressure. The next call that we should be hearing from is the official final go for launch here.
Go for launch.
30 seconds.
We are coming up about 30 seconds. About 20 seconds now.
15 seconds.
You can see some of the water deluge already.
T-minus
about 10 seconds.
9.
Oh, there we go. Apologies.
7, 6.
I'll let them count
5,
it down.
4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff. Go SpaceX, go IM-1 and the Odysseus lunar lander.
Vehicles pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Nominal power structure.
Mach 1. Max Q.
Look at that as we pass through Max Q here.
Impact shell has started.
Hope
Max
everyone's
Q,
awake
captured
now.
by
Good
Max
morning.
E.
Good morning, everyone, with that nice loud launch volume. Apologies for headphone users.
And the interesting thing of this launch is that just like the other launch from the Cape that we had today, it is coming back to land. So watch out in about a minute or so for that boostback burn after stage separation.
Everything looking good so far. You can see the engines widening out as we get into the thinner parts of the atmosphere here. Coming up on the events in rapid succession, which we mentioned earlier, but those are the shutdown of the 9 Merlin 1D engines, which is MECO, followed by the separation of the 2 stages. That is followed by the second stage starting its engine, and then the boostback burn beginning, where the first stage turns back towards the Cape. There's
Main
MECO.
engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Regular nuzzle.
Impact ignition.
And there we go.
Boostback startup.
Look at the flip.
You look at
Wow,
that from
look at that.
Max. Unbelievable.
The Falcon Nebula.
Yep, that is the plumes interacting there in the upper parts of the atmosphere. Both you've got the engines, you have the cold gas jet thruster steering. Meanwhile, the second stage continuing on its way into its planned, not necessarily orbit, but planned spot to begin the TLI burn about 40
Yeah.
minutes later.
The parking orbit. Right now we should see that fairing separating and exposing
Bearing
Nova C
separation
Odysseus
confirmed.
to space. There we go.
Oh, she's a beauty.
Wow. Looks so cool.
Oh, the landing legs are deployed there, yeah. Continuing along now, so the again, the second stage cutoff will be a little bit earlier than we're used to. Normally it's about 8.5, 9 minutes. This is scheduled for about 7 minutes and 45 seconds into
Both
flight.
vehicles are on
Keeping in mind, though,
nominal
any
trajectories.
times that we give you from this point on are approximate because the rocket is in control at this point. So if it sees that the trajectory is running too hot or not enough, then it may adjust burn times, both durations and or when they start and stop.
That little light there is the second stage. Kind of crazy.
That's going to the moon.
Yeah.
Now, before that, before second engine cutoff, or SECO, we have the first stage still to land back at LZ-1. So for that one, we should expect the first stage entry burn to begin in about a minute and a half from now.
Yeah.
And that should last
actually-
about 10 seconds.
One of the things of this mission is that the second stage is going to be doing a very short burn. I imagine that it is because it is some kind of parking orbit on low Earth orbit or something like that, and then the second stage of the payload is like 2 tons, so it doesn't really need a long burn of the second stage MVAC engine. So that is interesting. And even then, the landing is still before that. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't need to go into a full circularized orbit around the Earth since it's going to head right on the way to the moon about 40-ish minutes from now.
Mm-hmm.
So far, everything looking like it's going as planned, nominal, as they like to say. And yes, as you pointed out, it is a full nozzle.
Yep. No stubby. That's good. See, Max is not here, so we can talk about it.
We'll save
cannot-
until
he
after
cannot
the
complain.
launch. Yeah, we will talk to him after.
Yeah, well, we gotta
Amazing.
take the opportunity.
Yeah. Amazingly, right now, he's continuing to track all of the stages as best as he can. We should be having that, as we mentioned, the entry burn about 15 seconds or so from now.
Mm-hmm.
Stage 1 tree burn startup.
So we'll keep an eye and ear out for that.
There's the entry burn. And the view from the
Whoa.
ground.
Stage 1 entry.
Look at that. Just at the end of the burn there, that was
Stage one,
unbelievable
MTS
colors.
Yeah.
Both vehicles are on nominal trajectories.
Looked to be a one single engine entry burn.
And FTS on stage 1 is safed, and both are on nominal trajectories. And that's what we want to hear is nominal. And so far, that's what we're hearing.
The interesting thing is probably the booster from this morning should still be there at LC2. This is landing at LC1.
Stage 1 transonic.
Coming in for a landing real soon.
Stage 1 is transonic. We should be getting that landing now, about 15 seconds or so.
Stage 2.
There's the landing burn start.
Stage 2, FTS was saved.
Stage 1 light.
There's LZ1. And touchdown! The oldest booster in the fleet returns as its payload continues on its way to the moon.
That should be 199th consecutive landing.
Since the previous failure,
Nominal
yeah,
orbit
exactly.
insertion.
That's,
Yeah,
that's
since the
amazing.
previous failure.
And we believe the 298th, is it now, Falcon 9 flight?
Yeah, we'll probably talk about that later. But yeah, we had Seco 1. There you can see the engine cooling off already. Nominal orbit insertion.
That's what we want to see. We are in a good orbit. We are exactly a good parking orbit, so we're exactly where the spacecraft needs to be to send it on its way to the moon in about 35 minutes from now. Love seeing launches like that. Max, how is it from your perspective? We'll get Max back shortly as he's out in the field working all the cameras and everything out there. But
It's
everything...
so cool seeing that MVAC engine cooling off.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to stay that way for a little bit as it just coasts now. And as mentioned, the lunar lander itself is protected by the same material that's used inside Columbia brand coats, according to the company. So that's the thermal protection for the lunar lander. Is its mother made it wear a coat. Max, I do believe now we have you back. How was that?
I would sure hope so. That was spectacular, of course. Especially with all the moisture in the air tonight, the exhaust always seems to glow a bit differently. And the fact that the light seems to spread a lot farther. It's difficult to explain over comms, but when you see it in person on a humid night versus a dry night, you will understand. But of course, because it was a moist and humid night, the sound carried a lot better, and it was very, 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 very loud. And we felt it pretty good in our chest, especially the sonic booms coming back toward from LZ1. But the nebula, as we talked about in the pre-launch stream, of course, it was very vibrant and very colorful, and just very beautiful as always. So another great night here on the Space Coast.
Absolutely beautiful, and I hope your chest is holding up after 2 launches today with sonic booms.
Yeah, no kidding. LZ1 and LZ2 Falcon 9 first stage boosters coming in for RTLS trajectories. That's Brett, that's pretty rare.
It really is, but it was absolutely beautiful. Great launch, and yeah, Max, I know we will have some hopefully fantastic photos from you out at the pad, and some great videos from views that didn't make it to air. Hopefully we can get those to you tonight as well, either on air or by social media. So a lot of good stuff still to come here.
I'm working on a couple right now. One is still booting it in the camera for noise reduction, but I'm working on getting one up as soon as possible.
There we go. I'm excited for it, so stick around for that too. In the meantime, I want to thank some people who brought their support here. Young Rebel Lord saying, why don't we send an AI-enabled robot chicken? We prefer giraffes. Um, David
But I'm not
Dave-
throwing them.
David Colley, 5 more gifted red team memberships, and then David Colley also with more support saying "Go SpaceX." Thank you for that. Jessica getting an item from the store saying, "Love you guys. Love the new Starship patch collection. We are glad you do." You can see that in the corner there. Even if SpaceX doesn't want to give us stage 2 feeds, it's not that they don't want to. It has to do with ground tracking stations, right? That's how that works, Alex.
Sorry, I was muted. Can you repeat that, please?
They're not intentionally hiding us from the views like it's a USSF mission when they have this splash screen up, right?
No. Yeah.
It has to do with the different ground stations that they're above that can provide enough power for video feeds.
You can see there now the map trajectory, as they call it. That is the sort of current orbit where the stage 2 is located. It'll perform another burn in about 30 minutes or so. That'll put Nova C all the way to the moon. As you can see, it's like a low Earth parking orbit around the Earth, and then it'll move it to a Trans-Lunar Injection, again directly to the moon. This is not going to be like the other sort of landers that we've seen from the US or from Japan, where they take a little bit longer. This is going to go straight to the moon, which is interesting because it's like a 2-ton lunar lander on Falcon 9, and Falcon 9 can return back to land. It is quite amazing that they can do all of that stuff.
To the moon, Alice, or in this case, to the moon, Alex, or I guess to the moon, Odysseus too. So
Yeah, the Odysseus lander. I guess I never mentioned that it was called Odysseus. I realized after the launch that I was like, wait, did we mention that it was called Odysseus? Because it's the Nova C, but it's Nova. It's like the type of lunar lander, right? That they have at Intuitive Machines. The idea behind that is like, just like the shuttle was the shuttle, but you had Endeavour, Atlantis, Columbia, and things like that, right? They each had a name. So this one in particular has the name Odysseus, which is quite cool. And speaking of cool, by the way, we saw that launch. They are in low Earth orbit, and so far so good. They have cryogenic propellants. That's a first for Falcon 9. That's quite amazing. That the payload actually carries cryogenic propellants. They loaded them during the countdown. Everything is working so far so good. So really excited to see that capability. Because in the future you can imagine things like Impulse Space helium tug, Helios tug, for example, because that also uses methane as well for the propellant. So that is going to be interesting if they actually are able to put that on Falcon 9. It will enable a lot of things.
exactly, it's gonna be really interesting to see this here. And for those wondering why they chose the name Odysseus, it is named after the mythical Greek character Odysseus, known for his long, epic journey, as you may have read in the Odyssey, I believe, as well as his intellectual brilliance, guile, and versatility.
Yeah, and they actually had like a competition inside of Intuitive Machines, and the interesting thing is that they had 2 other finalists for this, and it was Archimedes and Geraldine Cobb. That was one of the. So it's what it's popularly called the Mercury 13, I guess. That was like a group of women that were sort of trained as if they were the Mercury astronauts. But it was never an official NASA program. It was just something like off to the side that they were running as an experiment kind of thing. And yeah, they were trained, and I believe she was one of the sort of top of the top in her class of that experiment. So yeah, and those that watch For All Mankind, you probably know that there's like a rendition to that person on the show as well with Molly Cobb. It's a different first name, but the last name is the same. But it's because of that. So yeah, and the funny thing is they actually call it Odie, because it's like Odysseus, but it's Odie.
Yeah.
So they call it Odie. Just like we call Percy Perseverance.
Some of the other top ones were on their. They literally have a picture of their name board. You had, let's see, Shackleton 1 or Ernie. Please, I've worked so hard. Just work, please. Lander. As you mentioned, Archimedes. Bessie Coleman was a suggested name as well. That got a decent number of votes. Yes. let's see. There's apparently someone there, Amundsen or Raldo, which boss said he is the winner, but that's in quotes. Obviously, as we saw the winner here. Just like that. Oh boy, there's some great names. Also, Hedy Lamar was suggested. For those who know Blazing Saddles, I would suggest Headley. Anyway, we do have a little bit more support here that I want to mention. Prasant saying, instead of relying on mechanical elevator to unload cargo and crew onto the moon or Mars ground, why not build a horizontal landing spaceship? And Alex, I think part of the problem with that is getting it back up.
Yeah.
It's again, the design is very flexible right now. We may see that from future landers, so we'll keep an eye on that. Colonel Bacon, Eagle Cam for the win. And then not Heisenberg saying looked like a gas cloud right after fairing step. That's likely due to the cryogenics, if I had to guess. So thank you to everyone for their generous support tonight. And thank you for the team that joined me tonight, including you, Alex. It's much appreciated when you join.
Thank you, as always, for having me.
Max Evans out in the field. Thank you, as always. I see some pictures already coming in from you. You're going to have to check out Max's social media channels for some real good stuff coming. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure as always, everybody. Especially after days like today, where the whole team has been going pretty much, since the sun came up over here in the States. Support as generous as you guys have been giving us today has been just. It means the world, and the only reason why we are able to keep doing what we do is because you guys keep coming back, as Das says. So it means more than really any words can say. So thank you all very much for helping us out here.
Yes, thank you very much to all the viewers. Some amazingly generous support tonight, which we really appreciated. Jay in the background, who's been pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, Jay Keegan, thank you so much for all of your work, along with Patrick Cahoon. We had some of those issues at the beginning of the stream, getting the audio going, but we got there, we got a launch, and we got to see the landing, so that's the good news here. One final message from Tim saying, new flight leader, go B1060. We will continue to update you on this mission through social media channels. We also have the article on our website that I'm sure will be updated once it's on its way. And of course, yes, Twist, This Week in Spaceflight, coming out Friday, as always.
Whatever happens, we'll talk about that.
And then you can interact with us later Friday as well for NSF Live. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for this evening. Now, right now we may be looking at a map, so why don't we go take a look at some of the views at Cape Canaveral as we head on over to Space Coast Live. Have a great night, everybody.